Hello everyone, welcome back to Session 2 of the Proving Ground 2.0 Small Group Study. In the last session, we talked about two tests that we all face at some point in our lives. The test of small things and the motivation test. The first test that we're going to talk about today is the credibility test. The credibility test proves our reliability and trustworthiness. All of us at one point in our lives have lost and gained credibility. Maybe you made a mistake that lost the trust of people around you. Or on the other hand, perhaps you spent years in school to get a degree so that you could be reliable in the field that you work in. If so, then you know what it's like to lose credibility, and you also know what it's like to gain credibility. Now, there's a reason why we're talking about this and why this test is so important. Your ability to gain and maintain credibility is what opens up the door to your next opportunity. For example, if a person is interested in being hired for a specific career position, they must first establish credibility with the person who is doing the hiring. Passing the test will mean a promotion into their new career. When you stop and consider this, you can't help but realize that most, if not all, of life's promotions occur after you've passed some form of the credibility test. So what exactly is credibility? Well, credibility is a combination of three things: what you do, who you are, and how others view you. Have you ever been in a public place and noticed someone was trying to get a good picture? I've seen someone in a coffee shop, for example, standing on their chair to get the best shot of their coffee. In the world of social media, perception can be far from reality, because we live in a time where people will go to great lengths, standing on a chair in a coffee shop, for example, to create an image that people are going to like. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but the problem is that you can lose credibility in life when your reality is different than your news feed. Let's look at Jesus' life, for example. Jesus himself faced and passed the credibility test on numerous occasions. The Bible says this about him. It says that Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and men. In fact, this one verse is really all we know about one season of Jesus' life. It's like from the time he was about 12 years old and he got lost in the temple. We don't read anything about Jesus until we see him back on the scene being baptized. But this one verse, it indicates that Jesus was steadily building credibility in his everyday life. Part of growing and increasing in life is to grow and increase in favor with God and man. Now, this doesn't happen overnight, but rather it happens over a series of moments and decisions day by day and week by week. There are three forms of credibility that will contribute to the proving of your personal potential. The first one is the credibility of competence. The credibility of competence. The second one is the credibility of personality. And the third one is the credibility of character. Let's talk about all three, starting with the credibility of competence. Competence is about people knowing that you know what you're doing, which allows them to trust you in your work. This credibility is earned when you are proven to have the necessary skills, knowledge, and habits for the role that you are in. But even when you've proven your competence, Another part of this test is the credibility of personality. You've probably seen a movie, for example, with an actor or actress who really felt relatable to you. And maybe you watch them play a doctor or a crime solver, and you may have had thoughts that they seem so down to earth, or that they actually know what they're doing. And what you're recognizing is their ability to use their personality to gain credibility with you. Your personality can make a permanent impression on other people, either positive or negative. The credibility of personality is not based on talent or skill or character, but rather it's established on your own personality or your personal traits as an individual. And here's how your personality can help you with credibility. It can help have a positive effect on others when they're in your presence. They can feel your attitude, it feels good to them, and they can just relax and just sense, wow, I like this person, I like to be around them. And when that's happening, your credibility, your personality credibility is going up. So practice common courtesy toward others with a smile, good manners, genuine concern for them, hospitality, openness, and then you can start to build relationships with those around you. And lastly, we have the credibility of character. Our character is never known until it's tested. We may have good intentions, but intentions are not the same as good character. So good character is the moral strength to maintain your pre-planned course of good intentions in the moment of opposition. Each and every one of us are going to have moments. And it could be as simple as the cashier at the store giving you too much change back. And you're standing there wondering, do I say something? Or maybe you already walked out the door. Do I say something, or do I walk away with the extra change? And it's in that moment that credibility is being defined inside of you, the credibility of character. Or it could be, another example would be in a social setting where you compromise who you are in that setting just to fit in with those around you. And that is the moment where it's tempting to just, break your character. There's peer pressure. There's people around you. You don't want to be the odd person out. And so it's in that moment where you have that opportunity to compromise being true to yourself. And I just want to encourage you, that's when you have the opportunity to pass a credibility test, the credibility of character, where we're true to ourselves. And when we do that, we pass the greatest character test of all. It's only then when we're honest. It's only then when we are true to ourselves that we're prepared then to be honest with God and with other people. And that's what happens every time we pass the credibility test. We enlarge our sphere of influence.
So my test, it seems like my entire life, has been on credibility. And I think I would say it started when I was a kid. My dad would always tell me, you gotta stay true to your word. So being truthful is very important. And if you say you're gonna do something, do it, because your credibility is everything. So then I grow up, and it's so ironic because I'm in media is what I do for a living, right? I'm in the media. And right now, the term fake news gets thrown around all the time. Credibility is going to continue to get so important over the next several years as we're seeing more of this fake news come into the mix. So I feel like my life right now, I always think back to what my dad told me. You have to be truthful, and you have to let people know what you're thinking and how you came about whatever it is you're talking about, so that the other person can totally understand what's going on, so that they have some kind of trust in you as a journalist, as a meteorologist, as a person, whether it's friends, family, anything. What I felt while facing this can be a little frustration at times. Me being a meteorologist, I'm on TV all the time trying to tell people what's going on in the weather world. What people don't understand is it's not an exact science. Mother Nature can throw curveballs left and right. Predicting the future is a little difficult. We'll leave that up to the big man upstairs, okay? So when something happens that's different than what I say, people will just say, oh, he's just a meteorologist. He doesn't know what he's talking about, blah, blah, blah. When the reality is, no, I do, but things change all the time. So for me, I get frustrated when someone else says they don't think I know what I'm talking about, when in reality I do, but there's a million things going on in the atmosphere that can easily change it. The one thing that has helped me 100% to pass this test is transparency. You've got to be transparent with absolutely everything you do. That way people can understand where you are coming from, what's going on in your world, so that your credibility doesn't get hindered in any way. The result of me passing the credibility test, I've got a weight lifted. I feel great now because I feel like if I'm being truthful, if I'm being transparent, they have an understanding where I'm coming from, then we're on the same page. And if we end up not being on the same page and they still think that my credibility is going down because I lied or whatever it is, and I'm being truthful and I'm telling them what's going on, then we just have to go different directions. But overall, from what I've experienced, as long as I tell the truth, let everybody know where I'm coming from, again, transparency being the big thing, then everyone understands and my credibility is great. If anybody's gonna be going through the credibility test, again, I would just say if you can just open up. I know a lot of people might be scared to share more than what they're willing to share, but I feel like that's where you have to trust in God. Like the more you communicate, I mean, we have this ability to communicate and it's amazing. A lot of people don't do it for some reason, but if you can just communicate clearly, it's gonna help you so much.
Now that you know about the credibility test, let's talk about the wilderness test. This test comes in the form of a drought or a dry season and will prove your potential to make the changes necessary to enter the next level of prosperity in your life. There's going to be times when all of us will have questions in our life, and questions will be many and answers will be few. And there's also going to be times whenever God feels so far away. And during these times, we survive, but we don't thrive. Before Jesus officially began his ministry, he had his own wilderness experience. It was just after he was baptized, and he then entered into the wilderness to fast for 40 days and 40 nights. The point I'm making is that even Jesus was tempted to give up in the wilderness. He felt distant to his Father, and he had to rely on his knowledge of God and his faith to pull him through and help him to pass his own wilderness test. There's also another great Bible example. It's known as the Great Exodus, where it's estimated that as many as 5 million Israelites left Egypt to go to the Promised Land. And while en route to possessing their Promised Land, the people had to pass through the wilderness. The wilderness was a necessary part of the journey. It was between them and their destination. It was their testing before the promotion. So in the book of Deuteronomy, it summarizes their experience. And here's what it says. It says that he led you through the vast and dreadful desert, that thirsty and waterless land with its venomous snakes and scorpions. He brought you, meaning God brought you water out of hard rock. He gave you manna to eat in the desert, something that your ancestors had never known, to humble and to test you, Why? So that in the end it might go well with you. So even though the Israelites were in the wilderness, it's still clear that God gave them everything that they needed to pass the test and enter the Promised Land. If today you feel like you're in the wilderness, it might be difficult, but keep looking for God's provision in your life. because He has something better for you after you pass the wilderness test. I want to give you 3 important responses that'll help you to pass the wilderness test in the shortest possible time. The first one is this. Number 1, keep an attitude of gratitude. Don't complain about what you don't have, but focus on what you do have. The wilderness has a way of distorting the facts and showing you an inaccurate perspective. Even in dry times, I assure you, even in the wilderness, there are plenty of things that we can be thankful for. Number 2, don't fix the blame. Don't fix the blame. Fix the problem. So many people fall into the blame game. When someone experiences a problem, the blame game just means that they blame their parents or their boss or the government or their neighbor or whoever they can. And even if today someone contributed to your burden in life or some of your struggle in life, don't waste your energy on placing blame. Put your energy into fixing the problem. And number 3, don't look back. Don't look back. When you're in the wilderness, don't look back. Life has no rewind button. Replaying yesterday means losing today. Reflecting on the good old days has caused many people to miss out on today's possibilities. So it could be that the wilderness you're in right now is a sign, in fact, that something needs to change in your life. Just think about what I'm saying. I mean, it could be that you're in a place where you're stuck and you're praying and you're wondering, why am I here? How do I get out of here? It might be a sign that something needs to change. Now, not all change leads to progress, but all progress requires change.
Yeah, reading through Proving Ground 2.0, I felt most impacted by Chapter 4, the wilderness test. I went through a really long period of my life where I struggled severely with alcoholism. And it wasn't that moment or it wasn't those years of alcoholism that I struggled, but it was that moment that I decided to step into the wilderness test that really just catapulted not only my recovery, but my relationship with God. During that time when I had decided to make that decision to step into that test, I had to leave my role as a mom and a wife and an employee and a friend and a sister. And I had to physically go into a recovery home for an entire year. And that year, which I consider my wilderness test, was hard. And when I say hard, it was the hardest season of my life. I was lonely and depressed and swallowed in self-pity. And there were moments where I didn't think I was ever going to make it. I didn't think that I was going to be a mom again or a wife again or, a reliable human being. I just didn't think I'd ever be trusted again. So walking through that stage was, it was the most beneficial. I wouldn't take that test back if I could, because that test really just moved me into a season of freedom and prosperity. Whereas the season prior to that, I was completely swallowed in bondage and addiction and just nastiness. So that was my wilderness test. When I was in the wilderness test, I went through just this pendulum of feelings. When I first got into the wilderness test, I was feeling really sorry for myself. I had the victim mentality. I pointed fingers at other people. I was depressed. I was lonely. I was sad. And as I started walking through that test, God started bringing these new feelings into my heart. I started feeling like I was a bit more motivated. I started feeling like I was partnering with God. I started feeling like He was making movements in my life. So I started gaining this trust, not only in God, but this trust in myself. The thing that caused me to overcome and pass the wilderness test was I was solely reliant on God. I was very intentional throughout my day. Like, what was I listening to on the radio? What was I watching on TV? Who was I spending my time with? What was I spending my time in the morning doing? Was I listening to music or was I in my Bible? And I was just very intentional about my day. And I think those moments is what really just elevated my recovery and my relationship with Christ, which helped carry me through the rest of the test. The results of me passing the wilderness test are abundant. I have I have a freedom now. I am a mom again. I'm a wife again. I have this extremely healthy marriage today. I have this extremely healthy relationship with my kid. I'm a great employee today. I'm a leader today. I'm, all these things that I couldn't have imagined, 2 years ago. I thought it was unattainable to me. So I just have a rich life, and I have a life that's full of prosperity and a life that's just full of happiness and peace and relationship today. If you're just starting the wilderness test, my piece of advice and my words of encouragement is to take it one day at a time and trust God with that one day and just move your life forward as best as you can by trusting God.